Hey, greetings folks. It's a beautiful, beautiful mid-June afternoon. I'm coming to you from a spot actually pretty damn close to where I live. Don't think I've gotten around to actually doing a video here. I've come around, shot some stuff, posted some stuff up on iNat, yada yada yada. Anyway, long story short, this is a really interesting site here. It's I mean, right on the side of the road, as I'm sure you can hear. But you get a little bit of an interesting thing going on geology-wise here. There's and I'll show you. We'll get over to it in a second. You get a old lime kiln here, an old lime quarry. So they're mining out limestone. They're mining out the calcareous rock. This is, of course, in the middle of an otherwise completely acidic, completely metamorphic and intrusive igneous, schist, granite, gneiss, your typical New England affair, geology, bedrock geology, typical for the region. So you get a calcareous microsite here. And indeed, I've seen some of what you get going on here. You get your spice bushes, you get your jack in the pulpits, you get your baneberries, etc., etc. You get some bloodroot down here. We'll get into it. There's some, nothing crazy, but a little bit of diversity for the area. Stuff I'm used to seeing on, richer sites to the north and to the west. But I digress. Here is a species that you would historically expect to see on the acidic stuff, though. We're not in it yet. Looking up is an actually pretty decent looking Castanea dentata. All right, this is a video. Allow me to monologue for a bit. I've been feeling kind of down about these videos lately. I've been feeling a little bit, down on myself. But needless to say, this is one I felt like I should go and do. We're going to cover 4 species of tree here, because I don't give the trees enough credit. I don't usually do the episodes just about trees. I'm usually more into the herbaceous stuff. But the 4 species of tree that, if they're not, ranging from essentially extinct in the wild to critically endangered to, simply vulnerable. Right, and the first of which is right in front of us here. This is Castanea dentata. This is, I guess you could consider it extinct in the wild. Very rarely does this tree ever, produce flowers, produce fruit. It's not really necessarily reproducing on its own anymore. And I'll show you what's going on here. We'll get a good look at the syndrome. I've done a video on this before. I'll link to below, but allow me to be more succinct and a bit more informative now. So Castanea dentata right in front of us. This is in the family Fugaceae, same family as oaks and beeches, and chestnuts, chinkapins, etc. Formerly a climax species in the region. It was a dominant tree in what we're standing in right now, which is an oak and pine woodland. Plenty of big white pines, plenty of red oaks. We'll go see some white oaks in a bit in this video. A cool one too that grows in the site, Quercus bicolor. But Castanea dentata was a dominant tree. The redwood of the east, it was sometimes called. It was like 1 in every 4 trees as you were walking through a forest in some of these areas. In Pennsylvania, New York State was a giant dominant chestnut tree. Here now, allow me to back up and get it in focus for you down at the bottom there. Anybody familiar at all with these trees knows what I'm about to show you. So you can see these fallen logs down around it. All right, down over there, down over here. You can see this is not one trunk producing this low canopy here in the mid-story. And indeed, these guys are actually pretty shade tolerant. It's not the shade knocking them back. These would recover, probably pretty well on their own if it was just the shade they were contending with. You can see all the branches down there on the ground. These are victims of a water mold, CRYPHONECTRIA parasitica, that has attacked and systematically, functionally destroyed the entire population of these things in the eastern half of the U.S. CRYPHONECTRIA parasitica. I hope I'm getting that right. A water mold. It's a brown algae, essentially turned parasitic. It is now just rips these things apart. However, this is a fire adapted tree. These things could burn completely to a crisp, come back up from that rootstock I just showed you, down there. As long as that root system is unharmed, these things will resprout, put out a flush of leaves every year, grow, maybe 5, 6, 7 years, and then after a certain point, that fungus the water mold takes hold, the CRYPHONECTRIA takes hold, and then it just kills the branches off before they can, become more than probably the width of a baseball bat, if that. So historically, fire would come through, rip through the oak, pine, and beech woodlands. You'd have I believe how the regime would work. The pines try to avoid it. They don't have the branches, down low, as you can clearly see. These are all white pines right here. No branches down low. They kill those off. These guys would burn completely down and, resprout from the trunks. And I'm not sure what role oaks would play in that regime, but essentially you have the white pines avoiding, the chestnuts surviving, and then the oaks, they don't, pardon me, I'm not too familiar on fire regimes. I live on the East Coast, not really something we have to worry about too much out here. But yeah, so the root stock down there, I'll show you again. So that root stock never dies. It's unaffected by the water mold. The branches can die repeatedly back. Who knows how old that root system is down there. But yeah, essentially critically endangered to extinct in the wild, depending on how you want to dissect it. It's a beautiful tree. I might as well just start with these ones. Like I said, these are impressive, and if I've talked about them before, you can find a ton of information about this, about chestnut blight, CRYPHONECTRIA parasitica, about the role these used to play, the dominant role these used to play in the ecology of the East, and about how now they're just not really hacking it anymore. My own grandmother remembers taking the actual chestnuts off of these things, which I guess are pretty spiky, and throwing them at other people, just because I guess that was the fun thing to do. So I figure food for the mind and soul. Let's stop, I've been frustrated because I've been trying to track down like rare orchids and stuff. Let's talk about something a little closer to home. Let's talk about something that has a little bit more utility. Let's talk about some of these trees that are going extinct. I'll just give you a little detail shot of what the leaves look like, and then we'll be on our way to our next specimen. If I didn't already mention it, the three species I'm talking about, you have, I think I did mention it, but I think I butchered it. We've got Castanea dentata, the chestnut we just talked about. We'll talk about the Tsuga canadensis, which is just vulnerable. The eastern hemlock. We'll talk about Fraxinus, ashes. Every single ash native to North America is critically endangered. Doesn't matter what species it is. Some of them are faring a bit better than others, but every single species of ash, is endangered. Is critically endangered in the U.S. And then we'll talk about Ulmus americana, the American elm, which all four of these species are suffering from introduced pathogens. I could talk about this anytime. We'll talk about it now. So all four are the victims of introduced pathogens. Castanea, CRYPHONECTRIA parasitica here on the chestnut. Then you have insects attacking the ashes and the hemlocks, and then it's another oh god, what is it that's going after the Dutch elm's disease, which I'll have to look up what that is exactly. I think that's also some type of fungal pathogen, or maybe it's bacteria. I'll correct myself when we get to the elms. But that's enough of an intro. That's enough about Castanea dentata. An important one to start with, though, again, just such an incredibly dominant tree species back in the day. Probably not for that long. It's said that these probably didn't move into the east, especially not the northeast, especially New England. It's not an upland tree in New England at all. It's not, way up north. It's pretty much down along the coast and in the southeast where you tend to find these. But probably had not been here as a dominant species that long. Probably why it was so abundant, why it was so dominant, was because it was a recently introduced species to the region, at least as far as, the last, 12,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago during the interglacial periods, yada, yada, yada. That's, as far as I'm concerned, up for debate. I don't know for certain. But yeah, 10 minutes is long enough to go on about this. Let me show you the leaves so you can see how this is distinct from a beech, because it used to trip me up at first. All right, and here's that leaf for Castanea dentata, quite large as you can see. Flip it over, pretty glabrous, not really any hairs on it. I guess it's kind of soft and downy a little bit. Dentata, because it has those strongly pointed dentate margins, you know, the point of each dentation coming at the end of the lateral veins there. If you could look at the underside, not too different than the overside. These are big, you know, big leaves, you know, comparable to the span of your hand. There's that trunk down there from which these, you know, these branches come off of. Here's a dead one, and you can see what's going on here, kinda. You know, what happens is that, you know, that fungus or the water mold, brown algae, whatever the hell it is, gets in the cambium tissue, if I'm not mistaken, gets into the actual vascular tissue of the tree and sucks up so much water, such a water-demanding organism, that it functionally just expands the vasculature of the you know, vascular tissue, forms cankers, and then eventually the thing just bursts. And of course, with woody, you know, you got to remember, woody tissue is only alive on the outer vascular edge. So I mean, everything in the middle could be completely untouched, and that outer bark could be untouched, but that thin, relatively thin layer of vascular tissue is what is diseased, and that's what ultimately, you know, bursts. And then once that's, you know, gone kaput, you know, the whole thing, you know, there's no more plumbing, so to speak, to the rest of the plant or the rest of the branch, and the thing just dies back. You know, this center one right now, right here, is looking pretty healthy, but rest assured, the clock on this guy is ticking. You see, this already looks pretty mature. Yeah, you can see how gnarly these get down at the base. They just burst open. This is completely anecdotal, but I've heard that people even tell stories about, you know, hearing these things, you know, crack and pop, you know, back when they were getting hit really hard. So you'll find plenty of them. You'll find, I mean, there's plenty of them here. These aren't rare, these sort of root sucker situations, but you know, never, or very, very rarely will you find them ever going to fruit or going to flower and producing fruit. Let's go check out the next one. Okay, right here, listed as a threatened species, you got Tsuga canadensis, one of my favorite conifers in the pine family Pinaceae. I believe they are, you know, rather, I can never remember, are they more closely related to firs, or are they more closely related to spruces? Doesn't really matter for the sake of this conversation. Just know that it's in the pine family Pinaceae, and that this is, you know, one of the, you know, keystone conifers of the region. Especially, you know, you're not in, you know, a spruce forest, you're not in, you know, a conifer swamp, you're just in one of these sort of mixed stand woodlands with white pine, you know, some oaks, you know, maybe you got some beeches mixed in there. You're gonna get this guy. So this is, you know, I think I was just reading the thing just now just to make sure I got everything, got all my ducks in a row. You know, one of the most prevalent trees, at least in the northwestern corner of the northeast region. You're talking upstate New York, you're talking Vermont. This guy is pretty important. So what's attacking this guy is the Hemlock woolly adelgid, which is a little aphid-like, you know, a little aphid-like bug that just attaches onto the branchlets and just sucks these things dry. Usually you see the little egg sacs on, little woolly egg sacs. Actually, this one doesn't even really seem to have any, frankly. Rarely do you see the actual, you know, adult bugs. I'm just pulling this thing down just to take a look to see if there's any on it that I could show you. Fortunately, it would appear as though there are not, which would be both a rarity and something good for these two specific trees. I think there's two here, maybe just still one. But here's what that get that on focus for you. Here's what those needles look like. Really notable for the undersides. It's got, you know, almost two little racing strips. I don't have the macro lens on here right now, unfortunately, but vulnerable, not nearly as endangered as the chestnut, or as the I'm just showing you the bark, the general form factor, or as the ashes are. Really lovely shady tree. Usually grows above water, or often, not usually, like you see now. And adelgids, they're not really good at moving themselves around, but they can definitely, you know, be transported. A big reason why them and the ash pest we'll talk about in a minute here. Two big reasons why you shouldn't really move, you know, your firewood around from location to location. A big aspect of controlling the population of the, or slowing the spread, I should say, and controlling the population of, you know, the hemlock woolly adelgid was making sure that people weren't moving their firewood around. You know, these things obviously attack and can even kill hemlock trees, but they also, you know, parasitize species of was it Picea or was it Abies? I think it's fir trees, actually. I think it's Abies. I could be very mistaken on that. Oh yeah, Picea, hemlock and spruce. Okay, so Picea, so spruce trees, of which, you know, you get a few species here in the Northeast, including an invasive species, the Norway spruce. However, this pest came over on you know, hemlock species from Japan, as I understand it, that were planted ornamentally. So, just another one, just another casualty in the never-ending war against invasive species, and the never-ending war in, you know, encouraging native forestry, native horticulture, and all that good stuff. So, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I had seen the elm tree right over here. We'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at the ash, and I'll leave this information with you to do with it what you will. Okay, and right here in front of us, we've got a species of elm. This is Ulmus americana. We'll go a little bit into the morphology in a second, because I don't think I've ever even talked about this tree, unlike Castanea and Tsuga, which I've talked about at length in the past. This guy is, you guessed it, getting hit by another introduced pathogen. What's going on here? This is actually a fungus. It's an ascomycete fungus. Don't ask me the name. I think it might even be more than one specific species. It came from Asian species of elm, and it infects. It's been spread to New Zealand, Europe, and North America, from what I understand. So it's an ascomycete fungus spread by a beetle. One species of beetle is native, one species of beetle itself is introduced and causes its own problems. So it's already weakening the trees that are getting infected by the Dutch elm disease, and, you know, accelerating the process, but it's spread by the native elm beetle too. So elms got something really cool going on with their leaves that I'll show you in just a second here. Let me get that in focus for you. Actually, I don't like the silhouette. I want the light. I pull this down. Oh, God, the mosquitoes are really, really bad this year. Fun fact for you, folks. Fun fact for you. I'll pull these leaves down for you. All right. Let's see. What do we do? What are we doing here? All right. Here are the leaves. Is that in focus? Yep. So, really notable. First thing I want you to notice about elms. And in fact, I think all species in the genus Ulmus, because this is the only species of elm we get here. You get Ulmus rubra, which I think is a rock elm, and you get slippery elm too. Of course, slippery elm could be Ulmus rubra. There's three species. One's a rock elm, one's a slippery elm. This is American elm. This is the one that gets to be a real big tree. Formerly, Ulmaceae is also in the order Rosales. These are actually most closely related to stinging nettles, cannabis, and mulberries. If you wanted that information, they used to be in their own little family, Urticales. So the stinging nettles are their own order, but that's not really important right now. Dude, you know, elms are related to weed, bro. I'm not actually making fun of you if you smoke pot. I get it. If you wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I get it. Just people who make it their whole personality. You know, but believe it or not, my gateway into plants wasn't weed. It was more just food gardening, which I think is a much more. It doesn't matter. However you choose to enjoy plants, just you know, don't overdo it with the pot. You know. What the fuck was I talking about? Elm trees, buddy, elm trees. So these leaves are actually pretty stiff and scabrous. If you pull it back, you know, from the edge towards the middle, towards the center line there, it's rough. It's almost got like a scabbard texture to it, which is pretty nice. The bases of these are super notable. Alternate leaves, by the way. Alternate down the branch, which you can hopefully see. The leaves of these are super notable for having the asymmetrical base to them. So it's always going to have, you know, just a little bit of an off-kilter. Dentate margins, flip it over. A little bit lighter green on the underside. Not much softer, but a bit softer. And then again, interestingly enough, though no relation to, I guess they're technically rosids, but no real relation to, you know, oaks and chestnuts at all. But just like them, that venation on the leaf goes right to the tip of the dentation there. I'll show you the actual tree here. This is a small one. It's a real small one. So here's the bark. Actually, no, not that one. Is that an elm next to me too? That might actually be another one, but I can't see. I know this is the one we're looking at though, right here. Wait, hang on. What is going on here? My camera's getting all screwed up. Okay, there's the bark. I do sincerely apologize. So you can see the guy's pretty tall, pretty lanky. Goes up to the canopy there. We'll get the canopy in focus. Or actually, why don't we do this? Yeah, there we go. It's not going to be a terribly good view, but I only got one other thing to say. So the mechanism of destruction, Dutch elm disease on this tree, is essentially, again, that's an ascomycete fungus. It's very similar to the CRYPHONECTRIA. Will infect the vascular tissue of the tree. It almost uncannily similar to CRYPHONECTRIA parasitica. The bark vascular tissue will swell, although it's an autoimmune response with Dutch elm disease. So the elm tree is sending water, or it's, oh god, I know I'm butchering this. Okay, so the CRYPHONECTRIA, the water swells in the vascular tissue, all right, the limbs burst and the branches die. With this tree, the tree purposefully kills off its branches once it detects the fungus within it. As an immune response, it is sending a, it's causing its vasculature to swell and to close, effectively shutting water and nutrients off, first to the uppermost branches, and then gradually down towards, the center of the tree, the core trunk basically, and then eventually the thing dies. However, unfortunately, and I believe these are just listed as endangered, I could be mistaken, that I'll put the correct status there, and eventually what happens, the whole thing just dies. It shuts so much of its vasculature off. The thing is no longer, circulating nutrients, no longer circulating water, and obviously the organism can no longer live. Kills the fungus, but also kills the tree. Also going on there, these I guess will come back from root suckers, especially because this kills English elm too. Especially English elm is able to come back for a little bit from the root stock, but nothing like the longevity that some of these residual chestnuts have. These were a real big street tree in America. They were like the most, I could be completely wrong on that. I think that they were like one of the most, planted out species of tree, at least in terms of, city blocks. But yeah, they've all since been taken down. Once the trees got sick and those limbs started dying, they were pretty much considered nothing more than a safety hazard, unfortunately. But whatever. Ashes too, ironically, I think were also pretty popular city trees. Now we get I guess pin oak is native, but just barely. You get pin oak and you get fucking London plane trees, which is not even a species of tree that grows in the wild. It's just a hybrid between a European sycamore or European plane and a American plane tree, American sycamore. To each their own. Let's go take a look at some ash trees. They do really have, just beautiful leaves though. I really do love the way that the leaves of Ulmus americana look. Also, just so you guys know, none of these are rare. Just because, I want to dispel something really quick, just because something is listed as endangered, even if it's critically endangered, especially in the plant world, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's rare. So a lot of these species, despite being listed, are in decline. They're not healthy. They're dysfunctional. I mean, look at this. Is also a pretty dominant tree, just getting, you know, shaded in and taken down. You've got a ton of other invasive species here. There's your Imperiled. You got burning bush here. You've got bittersweets, goddamn everywhere. What is it called? The glossy false buckthorn, which I can't, Frangula ulmus here. So all this other, so in addition to, you know, battling their own demons, so to speak, and just dealing with the natural stresses of their environment. So they're all sick. This is just a super, I mean, I'll just show you. Goddamn, show, don't tell, you know? You can just see, this is like a super sick looking ecosystem. Here's the burning bush right next to me. Everything is just super crowded. You got barberry down there. You got a ton of invasive species. You got native species fighting for their life, and just the combination of those two. You start to see where this is going. Surely you have to see where I'm going with this and what the future holds for a lot of these, you know, a lot of these poor native species. And it's not just in the US either. This is worldwide. This is American species wreaking havoc on ecosystems, you know, in China and in Europe. Don't get me wrong, Australia too. Cacti, you know, super cool, super neat here, are super invasive in areas like Africa and especially Australia. But, you know, we'll just focus our lens on the Northeast US for now. But yeah. You got to fight your own demons, and then you got to fight all these other, you know, species that want to move in and just shade you out and take over, you know, take over your spot. That is a big burning bush right there. A big burning bush, and I think it even has a bittersweet growing over it. So that thing's gonna come over here. It's gonna get all up in the business, you know, of this elm tree, and it's just gonna, you know, it's gonna kill it. It's gonna kill it. Okay, last but not least here, we got Fraxinus. We have an ash, specifically, you know, the stubby, spindly remains of what was probably once a much larger ash. We know it's an ash, and that's something in Juglandaceae, which also has compound leaves like this, just because these leaves branch off alternately. So the two leaves are opposite each other, yada yada yada. I think that this is Fraxinus. I think this is americana. I think this is a white ash. Not really hair on these twigs here, but you know, that's how you can tell differences. There's some minor morphological differences between Fraxinus nigra and Fraxinus americana and Fraxinus pennsylvanica. Fraxinus nigra, the black ash, has some substantial morphological differences. All three native to the region. All three critically endangered, being taken apart by a bug called emerald ash borer. I have talked about this in the past. Actually, that video is not even out yet as I record this one, but I will be talking about black ash at some point. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. These just get devoured by emerald ash borer. The only place that they really seem to be slowing down is at the far northern reaches of a lot of the ranges of these ashes. But, I mean, they're expecting something like 95% of the population to be decimated. The only place I've really seen ashes getting big is, you know, up in the northern region. I've seen some pretty big ones along the Connecticut River. I've seen some pretty big black ash up in, you know, thuya swamps. They grow. But, you know, same shit, different plant, and bound to just keep happening until, you know, people really get a handle on understanding the harm that introducing non-native species can do to an ecosystem. It's just gonna keep happening over and over again. These are just 4 trees in one little 1 mile loop hike. Granted, these are 4 pretty famous examples, you know, of endangered and going extinct, species in the region. Just looking to see if there's any other notes I had. Yeah, I'm leaning on the side of, or I'm sorry, yeah, Fraxinus americana, if I didn't say that, white ash, just because, again, not too hairy, and from what I've seen, the leaves on americana tend to be, the leaflets, I should say, these things, these are not individual leaves. This is a leaflet on a compound leaf, so you get the 7 leaflets there. 7 to, I think these guys will have 5 to 11. Fraxinus nigra has more than the other 2, but I think we can cut it off there. I think that's a pretty substantive video for today. I felt like I was being called out to come and do this. Definitely, you can check out the older, I mean, much older at this point, over a year old video on Castanea dentata I did last year. I think that this kind of puts more into context, though. So hopefully you enjoyed that, or hopefully, I mean, I'm not trying to make you depressed, but hopefully I raised your level of concern about these species. You know, they're still out here. They could still feasibly be saved. People are doing good work to try and preserve these species, but, you know, especially in the case of Castanea dentata, some really promising research is being done. You know, Tsuga canadensis is getting hit, but it's not the same as with these ashes, and especially not the same as with the Castanea in terms of how far back it's been set. The elms, I mean, you still get some pretty decent sized elms around. The other thing you have to keep in mind is a lot of these are hybridizing with other species. Doesn't help all the time. You know, does not help all the time. By the way, I wanted to clarify, the Dutch elms disease is not called Dutch elms disease because it comes from, you know, where the Dutch come from, whereas at the Netherlands, it's called Dutch elms disease because that is where it was first identified. You know, similar case to the Spanish flu. It didn't start in Spain. That's just where they, you know, realized that it was something, you know, distinct was going on. But I digress. I'm no pathologist or no human pathologist. I'm no, who am I kidding? I have no credentials whatsoever. That's the disclaimer for these. But you know, what have you. Actually, I'm looking up now. I see some bigger ashes back here. So this one's tiny and spindly. But you look up there. Come on, camera, work with me here. No, not there. Behind it. Yeah. There's some bigger ones going on up there. You see there's the bark. I'm not going to go back there. That's all just poison ivy. Let's get that nice uniform bark. Yeah, that thick guy in the background is trying to autofocus. All right. This is a disaster. Okay, you get the idea. We're gonna cut it off there. You know, come out and see them while you still can. Hope for a future in which some of these species have hopefully bounced back. But that's all I got for you. Enjoy the rest of your evening or morning, whatever it is for you. And I hope you come back, check out another video real soon. Take it easy.